All right, everybody. Testing. Better. We have people jumping on Zoom. Can somebody come in the chat on Zoom and just tell me, can you hear me?
Yeah.
That I appreciate it.
Yay, here we go.
I did that all by myself, figuring it out.
It's 11 o'clock on the dot, which means it's too early to get started.
To get started, yes.
Because we run on real estate standard time, right? We're always about 5 minutes behind. Hi, everybody. Oh, yes.
Community.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You can have my seat if you want. Okay. All right, everybody, we're gonna go ahead and get started. If we have other agents pop in, we will give them grace. We know sometimes our schedules can get a little wonky. So I do want to just acknowledge that we have quite a full Zoom room today, Miss Beth. So we've Adam Gephardt, Ashley Haas, John Hallwine, Karen Hagar, Levi White, Matt Hench, Rick Upshaw, and Sharon Tetman for all on Zoom with us. So I'm going to be monitoring the Zoom room.
Okay.
If any questions come in via chat, I will let you know. So we have the pleasure today of hearing from our very own Beth. If you don't know Beth, she has been with our brokerage how many years?
For as long as Hook and Ackman came on, I don't know, 5.
18.
Yeah.
Beth works out of our Carlisle office.
Mm-hmm.
She is part of the Dave Cook team, and she has a little addition to her background in that she also is an appraiser. And so when I had new agents asking me, could you please get an appraiser to come in, do a class, you know, we need help, we need guidance. It was like, well, we have the perfect resource for that right here in our midst. And when I reached out to Beth, she was like, absolutely, I would love to do that, right? Yeah.
Sure.
So thank you, Beth, for volunteering.
You're welcome.
Being voluntold. Thank you for joining us, and I'll be monitoring chat. Take it away.
Okay. So thank you for having me, and thank you for having a full class. I know most of you. So thank you for the friendly faces. A little bit about my background. So I have been in real estate since 2005. So a lot of years. I decided back in 2011 that I wanted to, the market is a little up and down, and I needed something to steady out my income. So I decided to look at appraisals. So back in 2011, I decided to look at getting my appraiser license, talked to a whole bunch of appraisers, and it took me a while. Actually, I probably started in 2010 to look at it to see what I could do, because I needed to find a supervising appraiser to get the experience, because you have to work with someone for 2 years before you can get your license. So it took me a while, but I worked with Larry Foote, who then retired, and Sue Burkholder also helped me. So I know a lot of you know Sue. Probably some of you knew Larry too. And they were gracious enough to take me under their wing and teach me everything that they know. So anyway, today when Adrian asked me to talk, I didn't really know what I was going to talk about. So let me get back up on the screen. So I thought, well, I'll go over what our appraisal reports look like, so you know how to read it when it comes through, if you get the chance to look at one. And then just talk a little bit about what you should do for the appraisal to prep for it. And talk about, we have new appraisal reports coming out. So touch a little bit on that to show you a little bit of how it's going to change. And then answer questions, because I'm not sure what you want to know. But anyway, so to start off, I'll just show you, this is a standard appraisal report that we fill out. So the first page, so most importantly, and the easiest way for you to find out the value is on that first page. You're going to see a picture, and then down here, you're going to see the opinion of value. So that immediately will tell you what the appraised value came in at. And then when you go in down to the detail, this is all the detail that we fill out. So this is all the property information about the property, about the market, and all of that. And then down here on this first page, this will tell you the description of property, condition, and that kind of stuff that we fill in. But the most important page is probably going to be this page 2. And this will show you what we're using to compare that property to. You could have as little as 3 comparables. You could have as many, sometimes I've had to use before 9. You could have as many as it takes to get a good feel for the value of the property. And the reason I would use more than 3 is when I'm looking down through all of this criteria of what I'm comparing this property to. If I can't bracket, which means have something that has more square footage and less square footage, and really get a good range, I'm going to have to pull more comps. So if I have a 1,200 square foot house, I need to find something that's less square footage, more square footage, bedrooms, bedroom count. So if I have a 2-bedroom, I need to find other 2 bedrooms. If I can find a 1, a 3, especially if I can't find all 2 bedrooms, I want to bracket stuff. So all the big stuff I should be able to bracket. If I can't, pools, that's another one that you want to make sure that whatever features your subject has, I want to try to find something that has that as well, so that I can try to show the value. Any questions on this page?
These just all comparative market approaches.
Yes.
You have to do something like replacement cost or an income approach.
Yes. Income approach. We do have that. We have this is just a residential, this isn't a multi-unit, but there's other pages that we can add in. If I'm doing a multi-unit, then I'm using a different form. I'm using a 2 to 4 unit form versus this, and the 2 to 4 unit forms have all the income, so I have to pull rental information on that. So I have to find 3 comparable rentals as well. So this is just a standard residential single family form here. And at the bottom here, if there's any kind of repairs needed, you're going to find that down here in this, down here where it says appraised in current condition. If the appraisal is subject to repairs needing done, that's where you're going to find that information. Because we're going to have, it's going to be checked here, subject to the following repairs or alterations. So if that is checked, and then it should tell you what it's subject to. And you'll most likely have pictures associated with what needs done. Leah?
So when you're finding comps,
Mm-hmm.
do you first use geography, meaning school district, county, and if you can't find like comps there,
Yep.
how do you decide to branch out? By time or by distance?
Usually by distance. Most lenders don't want you to go back any further than a year. And they would rather you go further out in distance than further back in time. So I always try to stay as close to the subject. I try to stay within school district. You're going to have some properties that you can't do that with. I had a perfect example of a listing of mine that was in South Middleton School District. It was a larger, had a lot of improvements, had an in-ground pool, walkout basement, and Brendan knows this property well. He's, and I knew the price point that we needed to be in was going to be challenging for that school district. So, and I get this all the time because it's very hard for me as close to that subject as I can. But what you have to remember is you have to think about what type of buyers are looking at this property that I'm appraising. So with this house, it was a family home. It was going to take a buyer that's looking for the amenities that this home had. So I had to take my appraiser hat off a little bit and look and see what other homes would these buyers be looking for. And I realized that they weren't necessarily looking at school district. They were looking for the amenities that home had. So when you do that, then you can go out further. You can go to different school districts and pull different comps that could justify that price, because that was the price point and the amenities that kind of home was going to be pulling. So when you did that, then I didn't have a problem because I could go outside of those limitations. That comes to a conversation with your seller, because you have to remember an appraisal is an opinion of value. So the appraiser going out to that house is going to have an opinion of what they feel they would use as comparables for that. We had a problem with this first appraisal. The appraiser went out, refused to go outside of school district, refused to look at half of the comps that I had given them, and they came in $100,000 less than my list price. The deal fell through. Second, put it on the market. Second contract came in, different appraiser, same comps that I provided to the appraiser, and we had zero issue with the appraisal. And we settled. So it depends on the appraiser. It depends on what their feelings are. And I had the same conversation with the first appraiser that I did with the second appraiser. And bottom line is, as a listing agent, you can only do so much. You can give as many comparables to the appraiser as you want. They have the option to choose what they want to use. They're not always going to see it the way you do. As an appraiser, I have a hard time with other appraisers too. Like I don't always see eye to eye with all the appraisers that have gone out to properties, and that's okay. But yeah, it's an opinion of value. Do the best. Working for your seller, do the best that you can with your comps. The time to appeal an appraisal is before the appraisal is submitted. So get your comps, get your homework together, give it to the appraiser up front. When they're going out, make sure that they have the documentation that you want them to have. Whether they use it or not, you can't control that. But at least you've given them the information that you have used to value that home. Yes.
Could you say that again on the appraisal appeal process?
So a lot of the times what I find is as realtors, we don't do anything until the appraisal comes back short. And then we want to say, well, did you use this or did you do that? The time to do that is before it's even submitted. Get to the appraiser first. Say, hey, I see you're going out to appraise this property. Here are the comparables that I've used to value the home. I always say, if you have any issues with price, condition, anything like that, please reach out to me before you submit it. Most appraisers will, at least the ones that I've worked with. Some will not. Some refuse to even look at what you give them. You're not going to be able to control that. You're not going to appeal that either. Because if they're shutting you off from day one, you're not going to get through to them. And it's okay to ask for a second appraisal. Now, whether the buyer wants to do that, that's up to them. But what I found is the appeal process is not easy to get the appraiser to change their mind after the fact. So you want to try to get to them first.
You may have said this, I'm sorry, I came a little bit late.
That's okay.
Whenever you reach out to the appraiser,
Yep.
Whenever you see that it's scheduled,
Yep.
understand sharing the comps that you use. Is it helpful to send them like a copy of the showing time? Like whenever we have potentially multiple offers, is it helpful to say, hey, just to keep perspective,
Yep.
it sold over asking price, but we had 20 showings, 6 offers,
Yep.
and this is why that demand created this price. Is that
Yep.
you able to utilize that whenever you're doing an analysis to potentially increase the value because of the demand for the property?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's going to help. Because the appraiser can only see what is entered into the MLS. They don't have access to showing time. They don't know what kind of activity unless they're calling and asking you. So any information that you give them is helpful. Yes.
In Cindy's scenario, how can the appraiser justify that if you can't find the comps to justify that particular property that's selling?
Well, and sometimes you have to go outside of their comfort zone. And if they still can't, then they can't. I mean, you can't make up the numbers. If that's what it took to get that price, like if you're meeting with a seller and you've pulled the comps and you might be outside a school district, like the one that I had of my own listing, I went outside the school district, but still found comps that for that house, similar square footage, similar, yeah, all that kind of stuff, but it was outside of the school district. So within that area, I can justify that price. So we can't make up the numbers. So if there's no sales, then there's no sales for me to use. And maybe that I look and say, okay, well, maybe a different approach. If I'm not finding the comps I need, maybe the cost approach is a better thing to look at. Or maybe if it's an income producing property, maybe the income approach is better. So I have to look at what approach is going to be best for that house. So it all depends. And I give that answer a lot. It depends. Tony? No.
Replacement cost value.
Yes.
Really doesn't come into consideration. Right?
Yeah, the replacement cost normally, I don't use that often for that. I mean, I can't think of a good situation where I would. But yeah.
Yeah, so my protocol is I usually leave a packet of comps on the kitchen island.
Yep.
I'll notify them ahead of time, hey, if you want, not trying to do your job.
Yeah. Yep.
I use subject property and like 6 comps, and then I use a highlighter.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, the first part I agree with, the second part, not so much. Yeah. Yeah.
15.
Okay.
Product creek frontage.
Yeah.
How do you comp something like that? You just start segmenting that?
Yeah. You really have to also ask the bank how they want, because I've done appraisals for Bank of Landisburg. I do a lot for Bank of Landisburg, but when you're getting to that much acreage, is the value really in the acreage, or is it really in that first like 5 acres and the house? So I've had, yeah.
Value, home value, roads. Sprinkle a little bit of creek frontage in there.
Yeah, it's difficult. Sometimes, I've had the bank say, it may be this, but can you just do it as this instead? So in that situation, I'm not doing it. I'm doing it as a hypothetical condition versus what I actually see. So, and I put in there that I'm just valuing what the bank is telling me to value. So I'll put in the report, this is what I'm valuing. Sometimes I'll have a piece of property that has an old mobile home that they're going to be removing. And the bank will say, I just want a land only value. I want you to ignore the fact that there's a beat up trailer on it. So it depends what I would get with the bank and see how they want you to appraise that, because that's going to be a lot more difficult. And if there's 15 parcels, they might have you do individual parcels instead of the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Any other questions so far? Wheels are turning. Okay. He was thinking of.
In regards to, and then your feedback, then it does seem like calling a couple lenders
Mm-hmm.
to like privy them to the property and have it in your pocket, so that you can be in control of how they're gonna value it, which I feel like it's like, buyers came along and saying, hey, this is their process, and we feel good about these and their capability to lend on our price, versus any lender that might have a different protocol process to try and make it valuable.
Yeah. If it's a difficult property, I always try to go with the lenders that have a little bit, that keep the loans in-house versus the larger banks, just because they have a little bit more flexibility of what they will loan towards. When in doubt, I always say Bank of Landisburg for the unique properties, because they're still, everything goes to their board. A bigger company is not going to touch some of the stuff. Just because it goes against the risk. So the bigger companies are all looking at what's the risk for taking on this loan. So
Beth, we have a question that came in
yes.
on the chat.
Okay.
Adam Osborne is in the room, and he wants to know, when you can't find comps that are identical in terms of features, how do you value things like additional bedrooms, bathrooms, finished basement?
Well, I go out further to try to find something that I can tie to. So I might have to go out, like I said, different school districts and that kind of stuff to get the bedrooms. Usually when I have problems with bedrooms, it's a 1 bedroom. Trying to bracket something that is only 1 bedroom above square footage. versus like when the development over in Marysville, that's on the hill. When they first started, a lot of those were ranches and there was only one bedroom upstairs, but then it had an exposed walkout basement with 2 bedrooms and additional square footage. When I'm trying to comp, and those were 400 plus, and I'm trying to comp a 1 bedroom ranch at 400,000, it was not working. So you have to go out further. I couldn't stay in Marysville. I couldn't stay in Perry County. You have to go out further. And then tell them why you had to go out further. There's a lot of writing in here and explaining why you did what you did on these reports for the banks. But yeah, those are the places that most people, they don't know when they're looking at the appraisal report what to look at. So this page here is what you're going to look at value. You'll be able to see the comparables that they used, and then down further in the report, you'll see pictures because we have to put pictures of the comparables in there as well. So once you go down further, you'll get the subject property pictures here, and then yes.
Instead of adjusting price for different features within the same neighborhood,
Okay.
you go further outside that radius to find the same.
Well, I'm going to use that and do adjustments on the comps within the neighborhood that I have, but to bracket for the bank, I'm going to have to go outside the neighborhood to try to at least find something that has more bedrooms or less bedrooms, more square footage, less square footage. Hopefully that makes sense. Yep.
So let's say you have a 3-bedroom house that you
Uh-huh.
do the appraisal on.
Okay.
And you find 3 really strong comps within the same neighborhood,
Mhm.
all 3 bedrooms. You're saying that you would also need to find a 4-bedroom and a 2-bedroom in your appraisal?
No, if I can't find, then I have to bracket. Yes, if I can find other 3 bedrooms, then I'm good. It's if like I have that 1 bedroom, I need to find, well, if I have a 2-bedroom, that's a better comp than a 1 bedroom. So if I have a 2-bedroom, then, and I can't find other 2-bedroom ones, then I need to find a 1 bedroom and I need to find a 3-bedroom. And because most of the time I'm going to find 3 bedrooms, I'm not always going to find 2.
So the same thing then with bathrooms, like let's say you have some good comps that have the same amount of bedrooms.
Yep.
Is there like a certain price adjustment you do then if one has 2 bathrooms versus 1, or
Yeah.
are you still going to have the same?
I'll bracket and I'll go outside if I need to. Yeah. So it could be a combination of both.
How many like features would you consider a good comp to be? Like, like bedrooms, bathrooms, pool, no pool, central air, no central air.
Well, and a lot of the times I'll look too to see, okay, how many adjustments did I need to make? So back up here on the grid page, at the bottom, once I start putting things in, it's going to show me percentages at the bottom. Here. So these adjustments, I try to keep an eye on that too. And then just look at how many adjustments I'm making. And the percentages, the banks like to have these numbers pretty low, the percentage numbers, the net and the gross adjustments. If my adjustments are pretty high percentage-wise, then it might question whether that's the best comp. And sometimes, I put a whole bunch of comps and then I look at all of them. I'm like, okay, I've overdone it. Let's kind of narrow this down and see, really weed out, because sometimes the ones that I just eyeball and pull out and put those in my first 3. And then I'm like, well, and I keep looking and I dig a little bit more and find more. And then sometimes it turns out the first 3 that I thought were going to be the best really weren't. Once I put it in my grid and do my adjustments and look at everything, I'm like, nope, I don't like those, and switch my order around. And so it's hunting and pecking. And with the MLS, the information that is put in, it's not always easy to find. So it depends when the agents are putting in or whoever's inputting things into the MLS. I find when I do my search, the less I put in, the better. And I can then look page by page and look at each comp, because if I say I'm looking for a ranch and I'm just doing one story or a ranch, if that agent did not put it in that way, I'm not going to find it. So the less information I put in, the better when I'm doing searches like that, because then I can click through. I also look at tax records, because you guys know not everything is sold by a realtor. So I've got to go into the tax records and I've got to research that, because what I don't want to do is have my best comp be not sold by a realtor, and I should have been using that from the tax information.
How would you go about finding?
So I start on Bright and use the tax record information. I also subscribe to the online courthouse records. So I go into there and I do the searches through there. You can also use Property Mapper and click on properties to try to find properties that would have also sold. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So look at the tax record database, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you put in, let's say you wanna look in the borough of Carlisle. You can pull up all the borough homes in the borough, and then there's a function on sale date that you can filter it by most recent sale date at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And that will put right in front of you the sales that have happened in the last 6 months. And then you're able to then identify, based on that, properties that may have similar square footage. And then that's what I found to be the best way to identify those properties. And then you might have to go through the street and make sure it's a ranch or a townhome or detached. If you go to the tax records and just search by sale date and just do the most recent first, it'll sort a lot of those really quickly.
And just to confirm, that's something that I would have no idea if I just didn't go and close sales.
If it's private, no, because it's sorted by agent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Some neighborhoods, I mean, it's very common for them not to ever hit the market, because there's people talking and you may not find that ever come up on the MLS because an agent was never involved. With those tax records, you have to be careful to make sure that it was not a family member, that kind of stuff, because that could alter the price. So I mean, there's no 100% guarantee, but if it's transferring from one person to another that has the same last name, probably not a good idea to use that one, because there's probably, it could have been a family member or something like that. So you have to be careful with that.
That's really, I didn't do that, but then I'm thinking, where is your picture?
So if you're using Courthouse Online, which is what I use for Cumberland County, and for the counties that have the Courthouse Online, they do have assessment pictures. So there's pictures there that now they may be 10 years old. It'll tell you the date on there of the pictures that the courthouse has pulled. And sometimes you have to drive by it and actually take a look at it and see in person. You can also use Google Maps, there's lots of things that you can do online, but sometimes you do have to go out and take a look at it. Sometimes on tax records, it may have a picture of like a mobile home or an older home, but the updated, like I've had situations where it shows me a 2-story house, but then the footprint will show a 1-story, and I'm like, okay, what is going on? And it turned out that in some cases, like there was a fire, the house burnt down, so the property record card was still showing the old footprint of the house, when actually there's a new house there and the old house isn't there. So you have to, sometimes you have to take a drive. Other times it's calling the tax assessment office and saying, hey, what do you know about this? And trying to get some information. So it's a lot more digging and making sure that you're getting all of the best comps that you can use. And just going through the MLS isn't always, you have to go a step above. So,
Beth, can you talk
Yep.
a little bit about the condition classifications, like how you classify per condition and what the difference in value might be from one to another?
yeah, so on the appraisal reports, okay, disconnected again, sorry. Go. So within your appraisal report, it does tell you the different condition types. No, definitions, here we go. So condition C1, it goes from C1 to C5. So a C1 would be brand new construction, recently constructed, never previously occupied, that kind of stuff. So that would be a C1. C2 would be great condition, but not brand new. And then C3 is well-maintained property in average to good condition. C4s showing a little bit of wear and tear, not new. C5 and C6, those two, if a lender's seeing C5s and C6s, they're going to ask what needs done to get it to a C4 or C3, because you're going to have a harder time getting lending to approve a C4 or a C5 and a C6, because that means that there's significant issues. Yeah. I was going to say, Andy, you see a lot of those. So those, unless you're getting like a construction loan or something like that to a renovation loan, you're not. I mean, very few times do I see C5s and C6s. But yeah, if there is a C5, the bank's going to want some explanation as to what do we need to do to get it up to that. And you're going to have to provide some estimates on repairs. Yeah.
So since we're talking about this is pretty interesting. It's very subjective, in my opinion.
Yep.
In my mind.
Yep.
C5 to you might really be a C4 to me.
Yep.
But as an appraiser, when you do these, and maybe an REO appraisal, you see some that really need a lot of rehab work and so forth. So when I do my BPOs, I'll, kind of do an educated scope of repair. Oftentimes I see the appraisers looking at the same property, but they're not doing that scope of repair. So they're saying, okay, well, these carpets ain't $5,000. Well, the property probably needs $80,000 rehab.
Yeah.
And my price opinions here and the appraisers up here, and it's just different. And the banks aren't going to listen to me. They're going to listen to the appraiser. They're not going to know what's listening. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what the solution is for that, but I mean, as far as, yeah.
I guess as a rule, do appraisers do a scope repair? I haven't seen it personally, but
we do an estimate, and I base that upon what I see. Some appraisers, you have to remember, aren't out in the real estate field on a daily basis. They don't have the connections. Like I always like to keep my real estate license and continue showing and that kind of stuff, because a lot of my adjustments I'm basing upon what your typical buyer would do. And the repairs and that kind of stuff is, we might call a contractor and say, okay, I have this. Can you give me a rough idea of what it might cost to do this? And that's probably what you're seeing is the phone conversation of, hey, here's what it is, and a detail and about how much do you think, so that they have something to go by. They're not going to have send pictures and all that kind of stuff to a contractor to get detail. Unfortunately.
So when you enter the classification, it's based on those descriptors, but then in your report, if you classify like C3 versus C4, does it automatically adjust the value?
No.
So it's just based on what you've already input, and you've already adjusted the value?
Yes, nothing is automatic on these. So I'm comparing, so I could have on my grid up here, it's all going to be comparing it to the condition of the subject. So and I just put pre-fills in some of these. So if my subject is a C3 and all of my comparables are C3, obviously no adjustment. But if I have one of them's a C2 and one of them's a C4, then I'm going to do adjustments for condition in these fields. And depending on what those are, it could be a percentage, it could be a flat amount. Whatever I'm doing, I need to be consistent, and I need to tell you what I'm doing. So if I'm doing some kind of condition adjustment, then I'll say this condition adjustment was done and here's why. It should give you some kind of detail down on the second page here of this report, should give you some more detail as to why I did the adjustments, what I used, and all that kind of stuff. Does anyone understand, or does everyone understand the ANSI, what ANSI standards are for measurements? Okay. So a couple years ago, they changed how we can measure properties, especially on like Cape Cod homes or anything when you're going upstairs where the ceiling heights are not 7 foot. So we have to go ANSI standards. So if you have a Cape Cod home and over here, your ceilings are 4 feet and it doesn't come to 7 or 5 feet until here and 7 feet to here, I have to do the square footage differently. Because with ANSI standards, it has to have 7-foot ceilings to be counted in this above grade square footage. So my square footage may look different than what the courthouse is saying, because in the courthouse for a 1.5 story home, it's going to be 1.5% of that first level. And that's how they're doing the square footage. That may not be accurate. So we're measuring the upstairs to get this square footage. And that, again, I'm saying on another page how I got that total. And in my sketch, it'll show you. That additional square footage, you still get credit for it, but you have to put it on a different line item. Down here, I would put additional square footage, not by ANSI standards. But that's why it's going to look different. And if you have a 1.5 story or something that has different roof lines that you don't have the 7-foot ceilings everywhere, your report's going to look different. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Was that a recent change?
Within the last, I want to say a couple years, but it could be longer than that because time flies, But yes, more recent. And it's going to be for a secondary mortgage that you're going to see that more. So Bank of Landisburg, they don't care. It is what it is. They don't care how big the ceilings are. So it depends on the bank. But most of your secondary market loans are going to have the ANSI standards that you have to go by. So now that I've shown you that report, I'm going to tell you that everything's changing.
Sorry.
But go ahead. Yeah. Yep.
In the situation of, how about like a bump out ductwork? Is it more, are they focusing on Cape Cod is obviously going to have a bigger deal, but using that same one, there was in 2 different bedrooms that were bumped out ductwork that was probably 2 feet from the ceiling?
Yeah, I mean, we have to measure anything that is under 7 feet. We've got to measure, and what you're going to see in the sketch for your square footage has to be the 7 feet. Yeah. So yeah, that makes a difference. Yes.
Before
me switch gears. You pretty much answered my question, but just to clarify, like in
Yep.
Carlisle, we have Apple Hill and Valley Meadows.
Yep.
Older developments where one builder could have built a dozen homes.
Mm-hmm.
So say, you find homes that are very similar with bedrooms, square footage and so forth,
Mhm.
but one has been updated with new kitchen, granite
Yep.
counters, and you have another one that still has pine cabinets and everything like that.
Yep.
Would you still use that as a comp because it's in the neighborhood and it's exactly its condition? Or is it better to try to find something that's closer to the condition of the subject property?
It would depend. It would depend on, yeah, of course. That's the answer you get from me all the time. It depends. It would depend on price and if everything else was, I mean, I'd have to look. If I don't have any other better comps that are in the same condition, similar age, that kind of stuff, I may have to use that one and then do a larger adjustment for condition. So it really depends on what I can find within the last year that may be better to use. Does that make sense? Okay. So this next, I'm not going to spend a ton of time with because, but I do want you to be aware. So these are our forms right now. By November, they're supposed to be changing all of our forms, which is going to be interesting. You have to remember when the demographics for appraisers they've been in the business for a long time. So they are moving to a more technology-friendly reports where you have to take your phone or iPad and that kind of stuff and not your pen and paper and do everything. You're doing more at the property going forward than at the office with these new reports. So I'm not sure what that's going to do to the entire industry, but just be aware that these reports here, you may see these for like the smaller banks and that kind of stuff, but the new forms that they're looking at rolling out look more like this. And this is another comparable page. So as we're going through the properties, the appraisers are going to have to measure things differently. They're using their phones to measure rooms. They're being asked to measure different things. Like one of the new requirements is we have to measure the threshold, the doorway threshold from the threshold to the ground. So to see what that first step is like. So there's going to be a learning curve. And you may have appraisers requesting longer appointment times. I can normally get in and out of a property, depending on the size, in 15, 20 minutes to get the information that I need for a property currently. Going through these programs and getting all of the information that we need for these reports now, because they're a lot more specific, may take longer. I forget how long ago, I had someone request an appraisal appointment for an hour. And they were there an hour getting all of the information. Another thing to keep in mind is with some of these, some of this new stuff, some of the banks are having data collectors go out versus appraisers. So make sure you know who's going, if it's a data collector or if it's an actual appraiser. There's a difference. A data collector is not licensed. They're just there filling in the blanks. Personally, I will not take an appraisal assignment if someone is giving me the information. I want to see the house. I want to see what I'm appraising because it's my name on the line when the questions come. And it's not a good idea for me to say, never been in the house, and so I personally would not, but there's lots of banks that want it because it's a cheaper option to send a data collector out. The information is fed to an appraiser. They're pulling their information and they're going from there. So just be careful. Just know that things are changing. Reports are changing. The way that we do it should not change. How we come up to value should not change. But I can't speak for all appraisers.
Do you know,
Yep.
Does the seller have the right to ask for an appraiser to come out versus a data collector?
Yes. Yes, you have, and the buyer has the right to, because the buyer's probably paying the same price for an appraiser to go out as they are a data collector to go out. So, I mean, your buyer has that right. Yep. Yep.
Question about square footage. Is it still a standard that even if you're 1 inch of your basement is below grade, it's still considered below grade?
Yep. This is how I think about it. If I can cut a door into all 4 sides and walk out without tripping, then it's above grade. If I'm tripping at all, it's below grade.
It doesn't matter.
No, because all 4 sides would need a door. And if I can't walk out, now you're going to see county tax collector records for bi-levels. They're always the one where the square footage is all above grade. So and this comes to consistency again. I look at that and then I determine if my subject property is almost all above grade, then I may do that. I just need to be consistent. You can't choose to do it for one and not do it for the other ones. So whatever I choose to do with that report, be consistent the whole way through.
When you said that's square footage, why are appraisers taking it? I always verify the courthouse records, because when I'm taking to do my drawing, it's going to have the outside measurements. Upstairs, I can't do that when I'm doing for the ANSI standards, because like I said, the courthouse is, when they're doing 1.5 stories, they're just calculating that first floor and then half of the second floor, which may not be correct if you have bump outs, and it may be bigger than what the tax records are saying. The downstairs, I'm still measuring the outside and going by the outside. The upstairs is what would be interior, because I can't measure. If it's a Cape Cod. If it's a full 2-story, I'm using the exterior. Yep. Any questions? I don't know, how much time do I have?
About 8 minutes.
Yes.
Valuing below grade square footage.
Yep.
That's a finished basement on
Yep. It depends.
Exactly.
No. So Kelly and I just had this conversation yesterday. So there's lots of different finishes. You know, some older ranch style homes, you've got the paneled walls, you've got indoor outdoor carpet, or like different carpet. If it's different finishes than upstairs, then I'm doing a lower, but I'm not giving it the same. Very few times am I giving a below grade square footage the same value. Never. I'll just say it. I'm never giving it the same value as upstairs. Sometimes I'll give a higher value if it's the same finishes as upstairs and it's very like high quality. Newer construction that has a walkout basement and has the same quality upstairs, I'm still giving it a little bit less value because it's below grade square footage, but I'm giving it a higher value than I would for the paneled walls and the, not as nice carpet and that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? So it varies. It varies. It depends on the finishes.
I just wanted to make sure, last night, and that's not $100,000 a square foot.
No. Yeah. 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 And I'm also not counting it in my bedroom and bathroom square footage. Like, you have to be careful too, because a lot of times on the MLS, you'll look at the total number of bedrooms and then go down a little bit and see where those bedrooms are. Because and it irritates me because I'll pull my comps and I think I have really good comps, and then I'm looking for a 3-bedroom and actually only 2's upstairs and 1's in the basement. But then I'm looking for another one, so what? It's still below grade. I'm not counting it in my above grade square footage. I can count it in below grade square footage. So that's just going to be on a different line item. But I'm not counting it in my above grade square footage as a bedroom. Jenny?
About, how do you talk to a seller, or even buyers who are very hung up on price per square foot?
Mm-hmm.
I get the feeling that some states put a lot of value on talking about homes in that way, and I get the state has always thought about price per square foot and always calculating it. And so like a home in this area might be overpriced if you're basing on price per square foot, or if a seller wants to. How do you talk to buyers about that in our area? How important is that?
I look at it price per square foot, but that's not overall what I'm looking at first. On my report up here at the top, it's going to give me sale price per square foot. So when I'm looking at this, I'm also looking at that to make sure that those are all falling within the same, like a close range, because if that's looking a little wonky, then I'm looking to why. But I hardly ever look at that unless it's a new construction, because that's harder to really justify with older homes. So I don't look at price per square foot very often, other than to make sure it falls in line with my other comps. And like if I'm pricing mine that it's coming at $150 a square foot, and all my comps are like 120 or 175, like I'm looking to see why. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
So conversations with sellers, when they want to price their home and they don't agree with your price. I always, and I think it's kind of an advantage for me, because I can be like, well, when I put my appraiser hat on, I always have to think, what's my job as you're representing you as a selling agent? My job is to make sure that the appraiser sees the price as we see the price. If I'm not able to find comps, or I'm having a hard time coming up to your price, that appraiser is going to have a hard time coming up with that price too. We have to be able to justify that number somehow. And if it's just not there, have the conversation up front with your seller. Prime them that we may have an appraisal issue. Get them at least to be thinking that before it happens. Best case scenario, it doesn't happen, and then they're good, but the time to have the appraisal talk that this may not work is not when it's not working. At least, explain to them the comps, what the appraiser is going to be looking for, and have that conversation up front. Does that make sense? And don't be afraid to walk away from a listing if it's way far out of the price range, because you're going to be doing a lot more work, and you might not get it under contract.
Easy one.
Okay.
Average cost to give people, if they're like, well, we want to just go out and hire an appraiser for a second opinion.
Yep.
We're doing it all market deal, we're just going to get our own cases together. Roughly 2,000 or so, or
For the price of an appraisal,
Yep, just go it out and get.
I charge 500 for an appraisal. The bank has to pay all the other people that have to look at that report. Yeah. So what the bank charges and what the appraiser gets are two different things with anything else. So yeah, I mean, that's usually what in this area you're going to see around $500.
And then, thank you. And then the other question is valuing. So when you have your three comparables up there.
Yep.
If we're talking about a property that has a handful of acres, 5 acres.
Okay.
From the appraisal standpoint, do they sometimes just separate it as if this is a new built home, 5 acres? We almost have to do 2 appraisals, one mainly focused on that home, and then another one evaluating independently.
No. For every appraisal report too, I have to do a land value. So on the second page here, regardless of whether I'm doing the cost approach or not doing the cost approach, you have to give a site value for the land and give comparables. So if nothing else, I've got to give some kind of value here. Now I say that, and I've seen appraisal reports that don't have anything there. But every appraisal report that I do, I have a site value, and then I give at least 3 land comps to back up that price on where I came up with that price. And if it's a new construction, your cost approach should be filled out completely because it's a new construction. So the appraiser will have the construction costs and all of that stuff available. That the new build, you should have a cost approach done as well. So you'll have a sales comparison and a cost approach to both look at, and they should be looking at both of those for when they're determining value.
It's not true that you really throw off the cost per square foot if we have. That's third price.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, again, depending on the bank, they could say, if it's a 100-acre property and I want you to just appraise the house and maybe 5 acres or the house in 10 acres, because at that point there's the core and then the rest is just excess. So the value is not going to be as high on the rest. Okay. Okay.
Nice.
I think we are all done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lots of participation. We are really grateful for you. Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Ben is ready. Ben is coming in next to do our social media small group. So stick around for that. I'm going to grab him right now. Would you mind taking your mic off?
Oh, yep.
Hi, Ben. How are you? Thank you so much. Can I mic you up?
My hands are full.
Yeah, you're mic'd.
All right, cool. Hello, everybody who's watching.